Okay, so friends, we have a special guest speaker today. Today we have Elder Nathan Krause, who is the Vice President for Ministry and Evangelism for the Texas Conference. I had the privilege of working with him last year at our mission trip in Houston, Texas, and this man is on fire for the Lord. I love seeing his genuine love for Jesus, his genuine love for truth, and his desire to share the gospel wherever he goes. I remember we'd come back from the field each day, and he always just had a handful of testimonies. And I just love, it was almost like hearing, I don't know, just when I have an 11-year-old son, and every time he comes back and he has something to share, he's just has that enthusiasm and that genuine joy when he would share because he truly loves the opportunity to seek and save the lost. So I want to thank you, Elder Nathan, for being here with us. Thank you for leading by example. And we're looking forward to hear what God has put on your heart this morning. So the time is yours. And then we will have a season of prayer together as a giant group today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm going to share a story with you. You mentioned your 11-year-old son. So I was about 11, I guess. Some of my memories of there was one day each year in the summer that sticks out in my mind because although my father was not a farmer, I grew up on a farm. Let me clarify that a little bit. We grew up on a dirt road in Pennsylvania, and we were surrounded by the homestead of my grandfather. That is, his land was next to us. My another uncle, his land was behind and alongside of us, and so we were surrounded by farmland. And though my father's little plot there was only 1 acre, in which we grew up on, around us, around us was the farmland. And I remember each summer when it was the day to bale hay, we would cut the Timothy grass, because we kids, there was 4 of us boys, and in my family, I was the third of 4 sons, and we were always involved because farm work requires all hands on deck. And so when it was harvest time, everybody was involved, no matter what the crop was that we were harvesting. But I remember specifically on hay baling day, it started very early in the morning. You had to cut the grass and leave it out in the field to dry. You had to hopefully plant it at the right time so that the rain wasn't going to mess up that drying process. If it rained, you had to leave it longer and hope it didn't get moldy and so forth. And then after it had dried, then it was time to begin the baling process. And on that day, we got up at dawn. We started at the crack of daylight because we knew we would be working all day long. There was no time for messing around. There was a lot of work to do, and it took all of us working all day long. Grandpa would drive the tractor. He would be riding the tractor, pulling the baler behind. And then the baler would bale those old style hay bales with the rectangular bricks with a couple of twines wrapped around them. We'd have to grab them by twine. Your fingers were hurting by the end of the day. And we were all involved in lifting, stacking, and putting the bales on the tractor, on the wagon, the flatbed wagon that was pulled behind as the baler was dumping the bales into the field. And my uncle, Lloyd, would be driving that tractor alongside so that we could do that. Anyway, without going into the details of how all of that worked, we worked hard all day long, sweating, sometimes bleeding, getting cut. And at the end of the day, we weren't finished until every last bale was put up into the hay loft of the barn. And that big old Pennsylvania barn had a small man door you could open, and a big lumber piece you would swing to the side so that the way the Amish and Mennonites, my grandparents were Mennonites, the way they would build them, you could open up the whole side of the barn so you could drive a tractor right through. And we'd pull it in there, and everyone was involved in lifting those heavy bales up to the second level of the barn and stacking them as far as we could and packing them like you're playing Tetris. By the end of the day, it was dark, and we actually had to be turning the lights on in the barn so we could finish the last of the stacking. Everybody was tired. We'd all worked hard, but there was a sense of accomplishment that I'll never forget at the end of baling day. We got the job done. Every one of us was important, and all of us were working full steam ahead, and then the job was done. And that night, you took your shower, got rid of all the filth and all the hay dust you had breathed into your nose and everything else. You were itchy, tired, and sweaty. You cleaned up and you went to bed, rested, knowing I've worked all day. I feel like I can rest now. Well, I'm sharing this because the theme is working while it is day here. And of course, you're familiar with the passage in John chapter 9. I'll read it here to you. Jesus said, beginning at verse 3, neither this man nor his parents sinned, because the disciples had asked about who sinned because the man was born blind. He said, no, it was so that he could work, the works of God should be revealed in him. And I'm thinking about this because what we do when we go out on missions for God is we encounter people who've been impacted by sin in this world. You know, maybe it's blindness, maybe it's something else. Our lives are broken, our bodies are hurting. We have been affected by 6,000 years of sin, and the world is in need of repair from a Savior. And Jesus said the works of God would be revealed in that man. And you know, when we, Stephen, you mentioned our time together in Houston last year, we would meet people and the opportunities to pray with people who were hurting and broken. And we see God already beginning to heal just in that instant, in that moment. We see God doing what he does. The works of God revealed in their lives as he begins a process of doing something miraculous to bring them closer to him. And then verse 4, Jesus says, I must work the works of him who sent me. I'm going to stop there before we go on. Jesus was on a mission because he knew who had sent him. He was sent by the Father to complete the mission he was given as Savior of the world. No questions, no ambiguity. There was clarity in his focus. I think sometimes it's easy for me, and I'm sure you find it true as well, to forget that God has specifically tasked Seventh-day Adventists with a mission that no one else has on this planet. We have been given the mission to share the three angels' messages and the whole Advent message of truth that goes along with that. Because the time is coming when every soul will be on one side or the other in this great controversy. And people need to hear the truth. Satan has spread lies about God and his character. And here we have this amazing opportunity to share truth about God. You know, I just spent 2 weeks. I was in Turkey and Greece, a week each, touring biblical sites. This was my third time to go to Turkey. It's a beautiful country. Second time in Greece, visiting where Paul was tasked with taking, you know, he felt led by the Spirit to go all these places. We had to fly and drive on buses to cram it all into a short period, but it's amazing how much territory Paul covered. And he did that because he felt like he was called very specifically with a mission. But in that tour group, there were some folks from another denomination, I won't say which, who felt it was their duty. One of them was a seminary professor, two others were pastors, and my family and I were the only Seventh-day Adventists in the group, and felt it was their duty to, you know, straighten me out on some theological issues. And what struck me was that I didn't see joy in their religious expression. One of the things we talked about was hell, the state of dead, annihilationism, whether God will burn people for all eternity. And I asked them, can you see this as consistent with the character of a God who is love, that he will perpetually torture for all eternity souls who refuse to accept the gift of salvation? And their answer was, well, whether or not we think that's right, that's what God's going to do. And I thought, how sad that so many people have bought the lies of Satan to make God a cruel tyrant who will punish people like that. That's just one example of the beautiful truth that we've been entrusted with that we can share with the world. God has tasked you and me as Seventh-day Adventists to shine light and to share truth with a world that's in darkness and confusion about who God really is. So Jesus had no ambiguity about who sent him and why. We shouldn't either. We should understand that God has given us a very specific mission as Seventh-day Adventists in these last days. He said, I must work the works of him who sent me. We should recognize we have been sent. We are ambassadors for Christ. We have a mission. And he says, I have to do it while it is day. Well, I shared with you the story of us working all day long to get that hay baled and put away. It was a clear understanding that we only have so many hours of daylight and we've got to get this done. You and I have only so much time before probation closes, and God has given us a mission that angels would love to do. But he says, no, this is a work for my people. What a privilege to partner with the Creator and say, you know, the Master, we're servants for him. And we're about a particular mission. So he says, I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. Friends, I don't want to come to the time where, you know, the night has come. We can no longer do any work. And I don't want to feel like I haven't run the race well. I want to be able, like Paul, to say, I've finished the work. I've run the race. I've finished the course. I've been faithful. I don't want to look back and say, I wish I'd done more. Because I assure you, when we get to heaven and we meet a soul, I often use this example when I speak to people about personal evangelism. A gazillion years from now, someone will walk up to you on the new earth. And imagine you're walking with your pet tiger by your side. You come into a clear meadow and someone else greets you. They're walking the path. They meet you in this beautiful meadow, and you know, they're petting your tiger and whatever. And they throw their arms around you and they say, thank you. I'm here because you shared Jesus with me. I'm here because you shared truth that I didn't know. And now, you know, because you shared it, it allowed me the opportunity to accept all that God has for me. What will anything compare to that when someone says, thank you, because I'm experiencing eternity with Jesus, because you shared him with me? With that kind of a perspective, it puts everything else in perspective, right? We begin to understand all of this doesn't matter. Nothing we do on this planet is going to last except whatever we do for the Master. And that's what we're called to. So Streams of Light International, I just love what's happening with the mission of Streams of Light International, getting out this all-important word of the Great Controversy book. I'd like to read to you something that Ellen White said. This is from manuscript 61B. It was written in 1895, just a short quote from it. She's quoting John 9:4, which we read, work while it is day, for the night cometh when no man can work. Sow the seeds of faith with an unsparing hand in faith. Sowing the seeds of faith with an unsparing hand. That's what we do when we go out. The hand doesn't spare. We're giving out those books liberally. And then she goes on to say, work as if you view the universe of heaven looking upon you. And that's what's true. God and the heavenly angels, all the universe is looking and watching with intense interest what's going on in our mission that God has commissioned us with. Work as if you view the universe of heaven looking upon you. One soul saved is worth more than the whole world. You know, as Christians, you and I have that perspective. I know you do. You could gain the whole world and it would mean nothing to you, because what you really crave is to see souls in the kingdom. And that's what we value. That's what we treasure. And that's what directs us and guides us. That's the motivation that moves us forward in what we do. So I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for joining us for this morning devotion. And I want to thank you for your interest in sharing the message of the Great Controversy, this amazing theme. This is the theological gift that God gave our Seventh-day Adventist Church through Ellen White. This interpretation, this understanding of the great controversy theme. It's a theological construct that other denominations don't have, and it helps us make sense of the whole big picture, and it gives us purpose to share this at the time of the end. So God bless you as you embrace all of that and as you prepare to share it with others.